Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Astrology Hub's 2021 Prep Series. This series of interviews features our 2021 Inner Circle Astrologer Guides and is dedicated to helping you understand the cosmic energies of the upcoming year so you can prepare, plan, and get ready for what's ahead. We also love to take this opportunity to introduce our existing Inner Circle members to their astrologer guides for the following year. And also for any of you who are on the fence, who are considering joining us in our monthly membership program, the Inner Circle, we love for you to get a little bit of a taste of the kind of astrologers and the kind of astrology that is included in the program. So today we are featuring Ari Moshe Wolfe, and we're going to be focusing on how 2021 is giving us an opportunity to elevate the status quo. So we'll dive in and understand why Ari is saying that and what he's seeing in the astrology of next year to come to that conclusion or theme about the year. And before we do that, I just wanted to make sure that any of you who are not yet registered for our 2021 forecast panel event happening in December, this is going to feature the 13 astrologers that are Inner Circle guides for next year. And it's a very dynamic, alive discussion between the astrologers about 2021 and how all of you can really accept the highest invitation that the year has to offer. And anyone that joined our 2020 forecast event last year, we've heard from so many of them saying that it was one of the things that helped them truly be ready for the very epic, that's like an understatement at this point, year that we've all had. So while it doesn't necessarily make you not affected by the energies, it definitely helps you have some awareness and some preparation for what is to come. So that is at astrologyhub.com/2021. The event is totally free. And if you are an Inner Circle member, you do not need to register. Again, that's astrologyhub.com/2021. Reserve your spot now. If you can't join the live event, we will be recording it and sending it to those of you who do register. So make sure you register even if you don't think you're going to be able to make it live. Okay, Ari, it is such a pleasure to have you back. We had you here on the show in September, and I'm so happy that you're back with us again. I'm going to ask you for just a short version of your story because we did go into it in quite depth on episode number 144. So any of you who want to get to know Ari a little bit better, you can go back to episode 144 and learn more about him and his very fascinating story. But Ari, if you had to just give us the Cliff's Notes of your story of how you became an astrologer, what would you say?
I was meant to. At a certain point, I got rid of my books, let go. Then I met my teacher's works, Jeffrey Wolf Green, Evolutionary Astrology, and delved deeply into that. And the path has just unfolded in its own way since then, and very much this journey of integrating and deepening my own realizations.
Okay, I got to ask one question. What do you mean you got rid of the books?
It was 2005. I was 2 or so years into this deeply obsessive curiosity about astrology. You know, I wanted to know all the answers, and I the core of my being is a seeker. So at that time, it was very much, I knew there was something about astrology. It's like, here's the thing. If astrology is real, then it can't just be superficially real. If there's meaning and purpose behind the scenes to my existence and this life, something deeper, which I was really seeking to understand. And if astrology is even a little bit real, it has to be all the way real. So there's a part of me that wasn't satisfied with anything that I was reading that didn't go deeper into the greater mystery and profundity of what this life is. I saw a lot of descriptive astrology, and it just didn't satisfy that deeper spiritual itch.
Yeah.
I was pretty disillusioned, and it brought up a lot around, I'll never know, I can never understand. And I was pretty jaded, actually.
Do you feel now, I mean, this talk is on the heels of a cosmic connection we did yesterday with Rick Levine on sacred geometry, which was so deep and mind-blowing. And it left me with, oh my gosh, there's so much that I don't know. Do you feel now, after however many years of studying astrology, that you do have a handle on some pieces of it, but that there's further to go?
Yes, I've come to a deep acceptance of that I won't know it all and that I don't need to, and I don't. There's a lesson that I've learned that I think is so essential. We're each going to be drawn to the studies and the information that is relevant for us for the extent that it is, and when it's not, we'll stop. So theoretically, we can all go. There are periods on my journey where I'm studying, and I was sort of disappointed in myself because the drive, the need to learn more, the curiosity that I had in the beginning for several years dried out. And I'm like, oh, I'm not learning all these techniques, all these different things that all the other astrologers know. I've only gone really deep in these realms. And I've had to learn that it's just not what wants to happen. And knowledge itself isn't actually important because the mind, the mercurial function of knowledge and information, it's never going to grasp it all and put it all together. So it's a matter of our sole purpose, what is relevant for each one of us.
I
and
love
seeing
that.
it through all the way and being able to really know that for ourselves.
It's one of the things we get to do at Astrology Hub is present so many different astrologers, so many different approaches. And I love watching our community gravitate towards certain astrologers and, inner circle members, especially because they get to go deep with you every month. And they'll be like, oh, I really resonated with this astrologer. And I got some pieces from this other astrologer, but not as much. But now I've really found my passion and I want to go deeper in that direction. And it's just an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah,
and it is highly personal and highly individual. And lots of times very unpredictable. It'll be sometimes surprising who gets really activated by who.
It's really about the soul journey, and it's all destiny. What we're drawn to, who we're drawn to. It's just a part of the path.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's turn our attention to 20. And let me just mention one more time again, if you want to hear Ari's in-depth story, I highly recommend going back to episode 144. It's a great episode in general, but you'll get to go more in depth into his journey. Okay, so Ari, let's talk about 2021. Why are you saying that the theme is elevating the status quo?
Okay. So when we speak about status quo, of course, it's Saturn. Saturn is anything that's structured within consciousness. And we also understand that all structure is temporal and purposeful for a time and only for a time. So everything Saturn oriented, whether it's the systems of governments or the conditioned beliefs or ideas, the internal posture that we hold about how to live here as a human being, the constructs of right and wrong, all of that is incredibly relative and incredibly subjective, and different eras of human history have different Saturnian themes of what's standard, what's normal, how we do things. So we always have to have that appreciation that the concept of the status quo is always in reference to a particular moment in time and just that. And then we ask ourselves, what's the purpose of the status quo? Why is anything conditioned to be the way it is? It allows for functionality. And that functionality creates the parameters, the boundaries, the container for whatever it is we believe is important to accomplish. And there comes periods, these evolutionary transitions that we're in right now, big time, where there's a push, there's like an oomph to evolve, to actually deconstruct, to reflect the status quo, right? To see what is now needing to undergo profound structural change. And since it takes a long time for every structure to become what it is, because everything that is structured happens in time. So it takes a while. If you have a posture, and if you see someone that has a certain physical posture, it took many years to get to that point. And to train ourselves to develop a healthy posture, a healthy way of holding ourselves, that takes time too. It takes wisdom and self-knowledge, right? We have to understand what our goal is. We have to understand what kind of new, more healthy, upgraded reality we want to condition for ourselves, within these new templates, within these new boundaries, more growth can happen. So that self-reflection is such an important part of any kind of Saturnian experience. And with this evolutionary transition, with Uranus squaring Saturn, before we even get into the particular signs, the general signification of that. Now, let's also note that this Uranus Saturn square is a last quarter square, meaning there are two kinds of squares. There's a square that happens after the conjunction, and there's a square that happens just before the conjunction. So Saturn is kind of getting closer and closer to Uranus, which emphasizes this quality of, okay, that Uranian energy is really important right now. The idea here is the ways in which we've lived, the ways in which we are conditioned are predominantly unconscious. We don't know the extent to which we have formed and crystallized a reality in our minds that hold particular biases and assumptions and values that go unchecked. So we can recognize it in the external world, politically, socially, and we saw a lot of that happening in 2020. Of course, a lot of that is going to continue to really come through in 2021 and beyond. But here's the point. The process of change, the actual structural crystallization of this new Uranian, upgraded, revolutionary, seeing beyond the conditioning, it's not going to happen right away because we have the force of Saturn, which is so familiar. Internally, there's so much resistance to saying, okay, the old didn't work. It's time to really think broadly, to think differently. There must be a way where Uranus, my benefit, my well-being, is connected to a way of thinking that accounts for the greater well-being of all of us. There must be a more elevated way of thinking that sees thriving and wellness and functionality as natural and easy and in harmony and resonance with the cosmos, because Uranus is harmony and resonance. Uranus is the friendly universe. Everything is friendly because all of the elements of life are here. It's one community. Everything is a projection of the source. And so all the different elements of creation are here together in this one reality, this one community. And so the idea of disharmony, the idea of special interests, and some people benefiting, other people not benefiting, any structure that is not in resonance with the truth of reality, with the truth of what this actually is, just means there's more growth, there's more evolution, there's more that needs to happen, more opening up. So that's what I see. It's upgrading the status quo. But I don't think we're going to see a lot of fundamental institutional changes on a core level this particular year. And the reason for that is this is a square. They're going in and out of that first quarter square all year long. In fact, I think even into 2022, they come back into that practically for the entire time that Saturn's in Aquarius. They're in this square vibe with each other. So this is just sort of initiating the growing awareness, the growing need to step away from what we've known and to begin to define it for ourselves. And I'll just say one more thing about this piece. With the movement into the fixed signs of Aquarius, squaring Uranus and Taurus, the emphasis then becomes, okay, we're no longer in the Capricornian realm in 2021. So it says we need to think independently. This doesn't just relate to our relationship to government. There's going to be a lot of stuff. Everyone here listening will have their own opinions, their own views, right, about different governmental rules and restrictions that are going to be asked for, that are going to be required, or different countries in the world will have a different relationship to, let's say, vaccinations. And socially, what can you do? What can you not do? That's just one example of really a chain of social dynamics that we're going to start thinking about. And the Aquarian dynamic is, do you belong? Do you not belong? And all constructs that want to say belonging is conditional to people according to race, socioeconomic class, belief system, or this particular outlook or view on healing. There's a need for each individual, everyone in the world, to find out for themselves, where do I define my standards? What's right for me, right? What is the world that I want to live in? So there are three groups that we can broadly speak of, not in a judgmental way, just sort of three general ways of being in relationship to this that I can speak to. I'll just speak to it. Okay. There's that perspective. I want to go with what I'm being told. right? And that means if you're a part of, a more consensus, whatever your government tells you is right, whatever country you're in, you're going to follow that because you want to belong. And that Aquarian energy then is, okay, I want to belong into that. And so the idea of elevation, the status quo, it's, I want to trust the improvements and the innovations that are being established on the ground level. But this could also be, your group, your community, your off the grid community that only eats leaves and doesn't believe in clothing. So whatever it is, it's like your way of thinking. There can be that group orientation. I'm going to identify with whatever innovative way of relating to the times are being presented by the status quo of my life. And so the elevation here is a new thinking, but it's happening within a box. It's happening within the constructs of what's socially acceptable within one's particular reality. Then we have souls that will feel that pressure. I don't know if I agree with all of this, but I have my family, my friends, my community, my school, my children's school, public opinion, the news networks that I watch, or, my conservative friends or my very liberal friends. There can be that fear of, if I am really doing things differently, I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be an outcast. And the survival dynamic, I can talk so much about these pieces because there's so much around our own survival is so deeply linked to belonging and being able to interact with each other in a good way, in a way of friendliness and inclusion. But when we create conditionality around that inclusion, we'll either pressure ourselves or pressure other people to conform. So that can be for many, many souls, 2021, especially because these planets are moving in and out of that last quarter square. It's like a transition point. The energy of that last quarter square is very much, you are changing directions now, but you don't know where it's going. That's why you often hear people call it, the crisis in consciousness point. It's very true, because coming into that last quarter phase, we're now waning into the completion of the cycle. And so there's a need to, in a sense, bring the constructs that we've established to a close and find a new way to really open up space. That last quarter square is very much about opening up space and finding new ways. So that can be very threatening for people relative to social insecurity. And then the last group are those that are, to relative degrees, get very excited about the opportunity to liberate and to wake up. And the awakening here can happen, at any level of consciousness. We can really address this on the level of, waking up from one social group or community or political affiliation and seeing it more as an observer. The awakening that happens here with Saturn and Aquarius is we take a step back and we realize there is no inherent necessary association between who I am and the conditions I've been identified with, that it's literally just the mind was identified towards a thing. That's a powerful place to be, where one can just walk on and change their orientation. And so there can be a lot of freedom, but this awakening can happen spiritually as well. And we can look inside of ourselves, our own judgments, the constructs of right and wrong, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Even I need people to believe certain things to get along with them. For me to feel safe and in community, I need to be around these kinds of people. All the constructs, conditions, Saturn, judgments that we create around our own personal thriving. And I really want to affirm that there is always space in the mind to take a deeper step back and cultivate observer. In the observer mind, we realize, oh, that too is just a construct that I held really closely. So the awakening here can take us deeper and deeper and deeper into these fundamental questions. Where does true belonging come from? Where does true social security come from? And sort of in my present moment articulation and understanding, the deeper level of realization here is the understanding that belonging is inherent to what we are. It doesn't have to be forged. It's more of a matter of bringing our mind into alignment with the truth of creation, which is inclusion, which is friendliness. And to appreciate that the ways that we are living, that we've been living, that we know how to live for so long, is just touching the surface of what's potential as human beings. Just like if we look back 200 years, we can see how much we've changed in our thinking. Imagine 200 years from now. So there's such potential right now to begin to really look at these pieces. And I'm just incredibly excited for all the sessions I'll do, for all the classes, for all the interactions, for the community, for the connections, because of what I'll be witnessing, or we'll all be witnessing, how we are all going to be going through this process of really deciding and figuring out for ourselves, where am I? How do I want to be in relationship to this? And there's an inherently positive potential here to elevate the status quo, elevate our thinking, be open to a more inclusive, expanded way of understanding ourselves and the life we're living.
So it sounds like you're seeing a lot of opportunity for blind spots in our thinking to be illuminated.
Absolutely.
Like places, things we don't even realize we think, just to come to our awareness of like, wow, I've been really attached to that perception or that idea or that belief. I'm wondering about the three different ways that people may respond to the elevation of the status quo. One, being within the kind of comfort zone box a little bit, but seeing the opportunity to elevate from within that box. The second group kind of feeling torn in the middle of like, I'm starting to realize that the things that I was a part of before, I no longer really resonate with as much, but there's some fear about breaking away from that security place.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third group being like very excited to embrace the change and embrace what's next. And I'm wondering if you see room for an individual to feel all three of those things.
Absolutely.
Because I could see that happening within, certain arenas. There's a certain comfort zone, but then in other arenas it's feeling off, and certain places it's okay to break away from the group, but other places it feels really hard to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then sometimes we what I've noticed is that we can have a lot of these ideas in our head, like, oh, I get, I don't need everybody to think the way I think in order to love them or in order to be in community with them. And yet doing it or transcending not transcending, but integrating the things that happen within the body when, the fears really that come up, or the insecurities, or that's a whole nother story. There's like the theoretic understanding, and then the actual living it, doing it.
Yeah, I really think it's going to be a thing that we'll be toiling with collectively. I truly feel that way. There's also the possibility of that rooted in insecurity, the arrogance of, I'm better than you. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to move on and just do my own thing, or I don't want to be. And that's sort of just the other side of the coin of being around people, but inwardly harboring this sense of, oh, I don't want to be living this way. I'm not content with the status of my human existence. Yeah, I think it really takes work. There needs to be a lot of self-responsibility. When it comes to the idea of conditioning with Saturn, we don't realize the extent to which we're conditioned because it's ingrained, right? Like, people who grind their teeth aren't usually aware of grinding their teeth. People that will have an impulse, an instinct to judge, aren't aware of that. So anything with Saturn often invites some level of therapy, some level of looking within and creating a safe space to explore one's deepest fears, one's judgments, where there's actually a lot of vulnerability and fear. And so being able to explore that, and of course, Aquarius here says astrology, right? Objectify, or doing any kind of work where we can stand as an observer of our own self and have a safe place to look at it, working with other friends, anyone in our life, any venue or place in our life where there's an opportunity to just be with what is. I think we'll see a lot of really cool forms and structures of things happening, of people coming together in community, different kinds of forums where people are meeting each other in circle, just to witness one another, just to learn how to be together. Yeah, I agree. Souls can really be in all of those states in different areas of their life, and it takes a lot of toiling. I mean, even within your own family, right? The Aquarian idea is everywhere you go, we're going to have different individualities, and each individuality is its own divine archetype. It's like its own little superhero, perfect being that has its own unique gift, its own unique quality of awakeness. and to celebrate that, even if their needs. So Aquarius squares Taurus. So Taurus corresponds to personal needs, survival. Really, we're in the Taurus realm, we're getting to know ourselves very, very intimately. Right? How do I like to do this? What's pleasurable? What's grounding for me? And then you're sharing the kitchen with a bunch of other people. You're sharing this earth with a bunch of other people. And so there has to be a way that we are excited and curious. I think curiosity is always a really good word, about other people and their unique way, without judging it as better than or worse than or wrong. And I think that starting point of just, even if we can't believe it, just starting with that principle. Okay, everyone deserves to belong. Let's start with that. I don't like this person, how they're doing it. I don't feel I belong here. I can't have these needs met. And just getting curious about the truth about that. The Aquarian Taurus square basically says there are enough resources for everyone. We don't have to commodify them for special interest groups, for personal gain. There's a way to be in relationship to everything that supports everyone. And I mean, the commodification of resources and the environment, all of these are also really important dynamics of this particular square.
You know, I had the pleasure of celebrating Makahiki yesterday here in Hawaii. Makahiki was the time where the Hawaiians, they timed it with the rise of the Pleiades on the east. Oh. So the Pleiades would rise on the east, and they started their Makahiki festival, which lasted for 4 months. And the 4 months was no work, no farming, no war, no, like it was complete rest and play and be together. But one of the things that I got to, there's this Uncle George is this Native Hawaiian who's helping to create this festival with us. And he said that he was demonstrating how people would work for 8 months of the year and farm, and then they would store enough for 4 months, but they didn't store with refrigerators and freezers. They dehydrated sweet potato and fish and taro, and then they just reconstituted it with water. And, you know what I'm saying? And so there's these ways that we've lost, but I feel like they're coming back. And I see it. I mean, they're coming back for a lot of people. They've been coming back for a long time. But these ways of like, look, there is enough for our community. There is enough for everybody. We don't have to be dependent. And I know I'm in Hawaii, but there's different methods and ways everywhere, you know. And so it's coming back into that relationship with the place that we are and the people. One question for you, Ari, you said something about Uranus that I haven't heard in this way before. You said that Uranus is harmony and something else.
Resonance.
Interesting. I haven't heard that. So the Uranian energy is inherently harmonious. And then what do you mean by resonance?
That everything in creation is in harmonious resonance with everything else. And if the way that I would like to present it is, if you think of an ecosystem, the entirety of the ecosystem is not just one tree and then another tree and then an animal. As an organism, it thrives. Everything is in beautiful balance in relationship to everything else. Has its own intelligence, actually, the ecosystem. Has its own evolutionary arc. All of creation is like that. I mean, you look up at the stars, and all the stars and the constellations and asterisms are all placed perfectly in relationship to one another. And this Earth, this solar system, is perfectly in relationship to every other solar system in all the other galaxies. If we start with the attunement that nothing in creation is outside of creation, that nothing that exists is an outsider to existence, then there's an inherent understanding and appreciation, like really an awe, actually, that the entirety of life is one. The idea of oneness, the idea of a one source is, of course, Neptune, Pisces, that everything comes from source and that the essence of everything is one, same. But then the Aquarian Uranian realm is individuality, that everything that expresses a unique individuality are all the different elements that reflect, metaphorically, the thoughts of God. And how could God have a contradictory thought? How can there be something in creation that's not in harmony with something else in creation? So we often think of creation in terms of, or life or existence in terms of Saturnian ways, which is much more of a Newtonian physics. This is physical, I'm physical. But that's sort of just the smallest part of it. The essence of reality, to speak it from a more of an astrological perspective, is actually about resonance and vibration. So the archetypal energies of creation are prior to the formation of time and space. That's why with astrology, you can have a chart that in this lifetime, present moment, lifetime, south node, you're looking at a symbol that speaks to far beyond this lifetime, in both directions even. It's the same thing with the I Ching. You can do a reading that is speaking about past or future, and it's almost like time is not the primary reality. Form, structure, these are just temporary things that we're using for a purpose. So we have in Uranus the understanding that the essential expression of creation is archetypal, is resonant, and it's not time-oriented. It's just universal. So we had the fractal reality that we're going to find elements of everything in everything wherever we go, because everything is expressing and a manifestation of the essential thoughts of creator, the essential ingredients of creation. And there couldn't be any contradictions in that. There couldn't be something in life that is at odds with anything else in life. The only place where we see contradiction, where we see division, is within time and identification with energetics of time and space. Once we begin to form an identification with me and mine, and we create a bubble that supposes this false reality of I'm living separately and independently of the rest of life, then we have all the struggles and constructs of self that are at odds with every other construct of self out there. But that's not inherent to what is.
Ari,
actually, yeah.
What about the things in the world that appear evil, or appear super, super dark and really harmful and painful? And what about those things?
Yeah, beautiful. So what comes to me is first to say that if we start with the idea that there's only good and there's only truth, like if truth is true, to kind of get into it a little bit, untruth couldn't be true. If reality is real, unreality couldn't be real. So the way that I particularly see this in my understanding and relationship to this is good and evil aren't opposites, in the same way that light and dark aren't opposites. I start with the premise that only love is real. Only truth is true. Untruth isn't real. Something couldn't coexist with love that isn't love. Because love by its very nature is unity, is inclusion, is everything is loved, everything is of the one. So my perspective of evil is that it doesn't actually have any original existence in itself. Its very nature is derivative in the sense that its reality thrives on the denial of what is true. And it's torturous because it requires the persistent denial of truth in order to maintain its illusory of existence. And it's a part of the mystery of the free will to choose what's true or not, and a part of the evolutionary journey. And it's a topic that I don't feel I'm one to delve into, but I can humbly acknowledge evil exists from the perspective of it's there and I see it. And there are even souls that I would say are identified or have more of a consummate relationship with that energy. And it would be naive perhaps to deny that. And yet the actual reality of evil thrives on what isn't true. And that's why there's no salvation there. There's actually no ending. There's no way for it to win either. Its only outcome is its own demise. And yeah, it's a very fascinating topic.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your insights there.
And I feel when it arises in our life, we have to always bring it back to our own personal soul journey, because we can get so lost in the larger questions about life and then forget that we have our work to do. So one thing I do like to offer to people is where we see ourselves in awareness of evil, or when it's coming up in our life and there's darkness, a perspective that I like to offer is it's always serving the greater purpose of reflecting back to us where there's the opportunity to return to love, to form a clearer relationship to what is true within our own selves.
Okay. So thank you. We have spent, I think probably most of that was on the Saturn Uranus square, right? You haven't even brought in Vesta, which I know you're seeing has a particular role in 2021 that you would like to highlight. So can you talk to us a little bit about Vesta?
Sure. Okay. So Vesta is the way that I experience Vesta and work with her is it corresponds to where in life there's a point of devotion and commitment to upholding the sacredness of life, of truth. It's singular, but through a particular area of life experience. And so the metaphor of the flame that we're keeping lit. So in the temple, you're keeping the flame lit. You're also sweeping the floor, right? You're making sure that everything's taken care of. You're maintaining the literal and metaphorical grounds of your life so that it's a container for the sacred. And it's sort of this focal point for human beings to have a relationship to a conscious creation designation of sacred space, which allows us to reorient to the eternal, to that which is inherent and ancient to our very being. So the Vesta function in our own charts and in transit brings up where there's that calling for devotion. Adam Gainsbourg, who was one of my first teachers, once taught it as, and I love this, if all the walls are falling down, Vesta is where we're holding it up. You know, we're at the doorway, keeping it up. And I completely feel that. It's a deep sense of resonance, and being connected and activated in that Vesta purpose carries a lot of humility, devotion, the quality of just doing your work. It is very karma yoga oriented. Just do your work, purify, and remembering that it serves the greater well-being. So Vesta is actually in this really interesting period. Everything has its shadow, meaning in its retrograde journey, for every planet, not just Mercury, there's going to be the point where it turns retrograde, and it's going to go back to a certain degree, and then it'll go back to where it was when it went retrograde. So that degree and that retrograde point, that's a window. So it's going to reach that degree, go retrograde, back. And for Vesta, this is happening at 6 degrees Virgo till 21 degrees Virgo. And it just started. This just started in November, just this last week. And what's important about this particular Vesta retrograde shadow period from now until June 27th, when it'll complete the entire cycle, is that it's going to be squaring the nodes and opposing Neptune. And this is actually the masterclass that I'll be teaching, the topic of when planets square the nodes. I'll be doing that in October with Astrology Hub. So whenever anything squares the nodes, natally or in transit, it corresponds to a fundamental point of integration that is necessary for our own evolution and growth. The nodes, really, they're portals where we are integrating information and experience to inform our sense of identity. So nothing is really real until it's integrated through the emotional body. When a planet is squaring the nodes, there's a core lesson there. There's a whole area of life experience that is crucial and necessary in coming to understand ourselves and our purpose and what wants to be seen and integrated at that time in our life. So Vesta is in Virgo, squaring the nodal axis in Gemini and in Sagittarius. And it's also opposing Neptune, which is currently squaring the nodes and will actually be exact in a few months, next year. So this is creating a mutable grand cross with Pisces and Virgo, the core planetary figures. So in short, a lot of what this speaks to is the confusion that can arise in having too many ideas, too many perspectives, too many options available, and holding this quality of perfectionism and trying to get it all right. So for example, if we are to use the example, and Vesta and Virgo is a great, I actually have a feeling that Vesta resonates with Virgo naturally in terms of rulership. So you have your teacher, and what's the Virgo thing? Setting up the platform, creating the course content, getting all the equipment, taking all the steps that are necessary, which are akin to creating a holy and sacred ground that's Virgo, functional, that works, right? You have a family. What's the Vesta in Virgo? What is your home a container for? What's the sacred Virgo work? What's the healing practice that you're cultivating and deepening every day of your life for you and for the benefit of everyone? So whatever your work is, the lesson here is to let go of the perfectionism in trying too hard to become an idea of what you're supposed to be that maybe sounds really spiritual. Sagittarius, right? Really good looking, it's spiritual, it's an idea of success, an idea of the perfect family, the idea of the clean room, where the clean room or the perfect template or the perfect practice replaces by accident the holiness, the purpose of setting the container. So we can have all of our shoes in a row. Everything can be really clean and it can look really good. And there can be this false security in Virgo when it comes to the allure of having everything organized, but actually using that organization as a way to cover up for an internal feeling of feeling very lost and disconnected from a sense of purpose. So it's a false sense of security and stability where I look presented, but actually I feel like a mess inside. The whole Sagittarius Gemini axis says it's messy. Sag and Gemini are just like, they're kind of intuitive, spontaneous, they're in the flow, they're not structured. So there can be a feeling of chaoticness in order, and just do it. The teaching of Virgo is take the next step, but the practice is devotion. And the Neptune opposition, I mean, this is obviously a really big topic. It's really juicy. But the Neptune opposition is in part speaking to that notion of forgiveness and surrender. You have your ideas, your beliefs, your constructs, the ways of thinking. But the work here is to not hold so strongly to it, just to surrender to what's meant to be. Let grace lead the way. I'll just give a little example. I'm investing in a lot of high quality equipment right now, just so I can do some teaching and just kind of upgrade my own work as a teacher. I want better audio, better lighting. Spent hours looking for the perfect camera. And as you know, that's a rabbit hole, right? Oh, it's that feature. And after a few days of spending a lot of time up at night looking, I just got completely exhausted. And I had to come back to giving it back to God, surrendering, just letting go. It's like, this is all about love. I want to be an instrument for love. What's the point of good lighting? Right? Yes. What's the point of good audio?
Right.
So not wanting to get stuck in that whole idea. When you have Virgo squaring the Gemini Sag axis, and Pisces too, those archetypes in particular speak to the conditioned, old, ancient Judeo-Christian constructs of sin, right? Belief systems and constructs that really require us to be perfect and, pristine. And so we lose the purpose, the essence, what it's really about. I let go and just remember that this is all going to happen in right timing. And then last night I visited a friend who I realized had a lot of information, a lot of knowledge for me. He does professional recording work and he offered to take me to his studio and teach me. Great, I'll learn some things. And he ended up gifting me all this stuff that he doesn't use anymore. That's where I got this nice lavalier mic.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
I can sing with it. It's really good. I'm using this wonderful lighting right now. I mean, I got this like really cool mic. So life has its own way, and it's about our devotion and our alignment and the love that we are making available.
Wow, so much there. It's incredible. That image of what do you do when the house is burning down? Like, what are you holding up? When 2020 happened, I'll never forget, I was on a walk and Vesta came in super, super strong. I was asking, like, what is mine to do here? Like, as Astrology Hub, as the leader of Astrology Hub, what is ours to do? And Vesta came in so strong and said, keep the flame alive. And the flame was hope and inspiration. Keep it alive. That's all you have to do. Keep it alive in yourself and be there to help keep it alive for other people. And it's stayed with me all year, as different things come up. It's like, is this hopeful? Is this inspiring? Is this true? Is this loving? All those things. And one of the things you said there too, that's kind of my summary, is like, it doesn't need to look perfect. When I think about the way we've delivered content this year, it definitely hasn't been perfect, but that core why we're doing it has always been very, very clear. So what you're saying with the nodal axis and Vesta and Virgo squaring it doesn't have to look perfect, but we need to remember why we're doing it. And when we remember why we're doing it, then it is perfect, even in its imperfection.
And the Tao has a way, like the Holy Oneness has a way of taking care of the details. We just need to show up.
Right.
I keep on learning that, truly.
Right. And it's very synchronistic, because I was on the phone this morning with my Virgo, one of my dear Virgo girlfriends, and she had just learned the true definition of Virgo, or virgin, which is a sovereign woman unto her own self. And I got so excited, because it was like that. I got so excited for her, because it was that moment of revelation of like, oh wait, Virgo doesn't mean that virgin doesn't mean what I thought it meant. It has nothing to do with whether or not I've had sex with someone, or it's comes from this idea of sovereignty and strength and the ability to choose who to share my sexuality and my love. And so when you said something about the word pristine, what is actually pristine? Is pristine the line of shoes? Or is pristine a space of love, for example? So there's so much there to unravel. And when you brought up the Judeo-Christian thing, it's like, there's so much to unravel right there, with so many of the things that we've been programmed to believe are true. And what happens, the liberation that happens as we realize, like, whoa, that was a set of assumptions that I don't know if any of those things are actually true anymore. And actually, I'm learning that they're not. So getting to the bottom of like, what is pristine? Does it mean that I've never had sex with someone? Or does it mean something totally different? And exploring those things ourselves, right?
Thank you for speaking of that. That's so essential in my experience of the Vesta archetype. And maybe this could be a different topic, but the history of the Vesta role.
Right, the Vestal virgins.
Cultures, right? And how that actually was degraded over time from sort of a place of sovereign choice, and it's holding a sacred space of ritual and attunement. It's a service, and there's so much agency and sovereignty in that role, but it became more and more of a servitude kind of dynamic, linked with more deprivation, inferiority, into the temple priestess, or even the ideas of sacred prostitution. It's like all of these things have been a gradual movement into, here's a role that you're playing, but it's not this like gift that you're bringing forward from your own agency and your own commitment. And the Vesta energy in our own lives, it cannot come from that Virgo confusion of servitude, of I have to. This is the psychology of inferiority is a distortion within the Virgo archetype. And it's a misunderstanding of true service, which really comes from our own divine sovereignty.
Wow. Brilliant. Okay. I'm so happy you brought in Vesta for this year. So how long is this going to be active? Until June, you said?
Yeah. So the midpoint, which is the Sun Vesta opposition, is March 4th. It moves retrograde January 19th at 21 degrees Virgo, which is just a few degrees from the nodes. So it's basically from like the end of this year till, March, just within a few degrees of the nodes. In a very tight opposition. What's that?
January 19th is my birthday.
Oh, cool. Wow. Aw. You have a very special Vesta birthday this year. That's great.
Yay. Oh, that's great.
That's so perfect.
Call her in.
What a gift. Yeah, so it's really strong during the winter and early spring seasons. And then it just kind of begins to really move out of it at that point. And it ends the shadow period in June.
Okay. Wonderful. Now, if you had to identify some practices or anything we can do between now and the end of the year to be prepared for the energy of 2021, what would you invite us to do?
Okay. To me, the ending of this year is actually about alignment, clarification, and integration. We have all of these planets right now. Mars has gone direct. It's going to move and square all of the Capricorn for the last time. Jupiter is now in a new phase with Pluto, so there's a lot of new psychological awareness of opportunities, potentials to act upon. It's moving towards Saturn at the end of the year, conjunct at the beginning of Aquarius. There are all these themes that resonate with a new cycle, completion of all the 2020 transits, and really entering into a new phase. This is culminating at the very end of this year. So to me, especially right now for the next few weeks, as Mars is moving to square all the Capricorn, we're taking steps forward. We're integrating new levels of self-awareness, new levels of confidence. So in terms of practices, our own personal practices, the discipline is always really important. Discipline that comes from the wisdom of understanding where we want to go and what kind of inner work and commitment is necessary to nurture that growth. So this discipline has to come from sort of reaping all the lessons of this year to understand, okay, in the long term, what do I need to work on and really commit to strengthen who I want to be and the kind of life I want to experience. So having really clear self-knowledge to cultivate more healthy practice. And of course, go gentle. All of this energy, so new. We're just learning a new way. But I think there's a lot of self-awareness that we can all really harvest right now. That's one. Another one would be in terms of our work, whatever our sense of purpose and direction is right now. These transits call upon a new level of confidence and clarity. So whether this is in a relationship, whether it's in our business, whether it's a project we're working on, this is a very doing kind of vibe. So do it. Let's get started. Just do it. There can be a quality of fear because it's Mars. It's like, Aries, Capricorn, this is new. I'm afraid of making a mistake. I'm afraid of failing. It's like, just try. This is a new phase, a new cycle. Next year will teach you a lot. Like you're just, whatever we're doing right now, it's not as big as we think it is. We're just starting and we're getting ourselves entrained and aligned and stronger, really, for the ongoing journey, for the growth and the gifts that are yet to come in our own growth together. So then, and then on a different level, taking baths, really working on just ways that we can relax ourselves, drinking good tea, because with all of this like new energy and doing, there's a lot of unknown, a lot of newness. So it's just really good to embrace that Cancer polarity within all of this and just be loving towards ourselves and towards each other.
Thank you for saying that. I feel like we can't be reminded enough to do those things. Yeah. So thank you for being, and I finally have a bathtub. I haven't had a bathtub for like 4 years and I have one now. So now when you said take a bath, I'm like, I can actually take a bath. Yay.
Nice. Oh.
Yeah. Great. Ari, thank you so much. Let's see. Is there anything else I wanted to ask you before we move on? Oh yeah. I wanted to ask you about your mastery class. You alluded to it a little bit, but can you tell us about your mastery class that you'll be teaching the inner circle?
So it's on planets that square the nodes. In the mastery class, we're going to be defining really what the nodes are in the way that I work with them, how I see them as the portal for evolutionary integration. It's sort of essential for everything that we do in our lives. And really going into the archetypal experience of planets that square the nodes. There's an evolutionary astrology teaching that describes this particular dynamic as a skipped step. Right? So in your natal chart, this is where there's a stuck issue, something that has often been unresolved because of trauma, repression, social conditioning. And a part of the program of this life, for those of us who have a planet that squares the nodes, is intended to bring us into resolution of that particular planetary function. And the process of resolving that planetary function is, of course, going very deeply into understanding the duality of the nodes. Because what happens when you have a planet squaring the nodes, there's a strong division in consciousness between opposites. We'll tend to flip-flop between extremes, with this core piece not really seen clearly. So the tendency is to go to these different extremes until the wisdom really settles in. So we'll be talking about that particular pattern and how to actually resolve that. We'll be looking at natal chart examples and looking at transit examples.
And if people don't have a planet square the nodes, is that addressed as well? Does that mean they don't have that skip step kind of
Oh,
dynamic happening?
there are many options and opportunities in astrology to have all kinds of challenging dynamics in your chart. If you don't have a planet squaring the nodes, you wouldn't have that particular dynamic, because the energy of a square is a turning point. So it's literally in between, equidistant from the two nodes. So that is a very particular kind of experience. You can have a semi-square, which is a different kind of experience. And there are all kinds of possibilities. But yeah, you could also have the angles, ascendant, descendant, squaring the nodes, which is another unique kind of configuration. All of this, I'll just close with the idea that everything in the chart at the core reflects the intentions of the soul. It's pointing us back to where there's the opportunity and intention for evolution and growth to happen. And in that same sense, it implies kind of where we're coming from. The template that brought us into this particular experience, that is the place where we're doing all of this work. So I'll be really addressing what are the karmic themes that this configuration speaks to from the past, leading us into this lifetime where what kind of resolution is possible.
Brilliant. Okay. Very much looking forward to that. For people that want to check you out now, because you're going to be our guide in October, there's a couple ways you get to learn more from Ari. What is your website if they want to go?
arimoshe.com.
Ari Moshe, M-O-S-H-E.
Yeah.
Okay. ARIMOSHE.com.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then also you do have the opportunity to hear him speak with each day. There's going to be 6 or 7 astrologers on the panel. So Ari will be one on the second day of talks for our 2021 forecast panel event. Again, it's free. We would love to have you there. It is astrologyhub.com/2021. You'll be hearing from Ari and then the other astrologers we've been featuring as a part of this 2021 prep series, who are also our astrologers for the inner circle that will be open for a period of time in December. We only open a couple times per year, but we will be opening up the membership in December. And we'd love to have you join that free event to see if it's something that you'd like to join. So it's astrologyhub.com/2021. Can't wait to see you all there. Ari, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been such a pleasure. It's the first time we talked, I was like, yes, I love this man. Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the show again, and looking forward to the opportunity to go even deeper with you next year. And we were talking before we went live, by October, it's like unfathomable to think where we're going to be. It's like,
no way to know.
Exactly. This time last year, it was the same thing. This time next year, I mean, I think so many of us were really being asked to embrace this idea of not knowing, which probably was the truth all the time. We had an illusion of knowing, but it's even more obvious now that it's like, it's nobody, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. And as always, thank you for making astrology a part of your life. We'll catch you on the next episode.